Yeah, my great-grandfather, Thomas Goodwin Green, he was born in 1822, and where the family came from Boston in Lincolnshire, they were actually uh, wharfingers who sort of did a lot of the movement of goods and so on. So that's how the family was originally. But they moved to London, and in about 1840 he fell in love madly with a girl called Mary Tenniel, who was the sister of Sir John Tenniel, who later became the Punch illustrator. And Mary didn't return his love, and so Thomas set off for Australia nursing a broken heart. And when he got out there, I think he was down to his last 5 shillings. And this is, bear in mind, this is sort of a long time ago. 1840, it was pretty basic stuff. And he was asked at some county show or something whether he could put up a telegraph pole, and he said, yes, of course I can, never having put a telegraph pole up in his life. So he did, and he made a little bit of money out of that. And this led him to initially a lot of fencing work in Australia, and then later to doing all the telegraph poles for the early telegraph stuff. And he made, obviously, a good fortune out there. And he heard from the Mary's Tenniel's sister that she was now rather keen to meet him again. So he sold up and came back to England, and he and Mary then got married, and they went off on their honeymoon to Scarborough, and obviously over a pint of beer or whatever they did in those days, it probably was something else, he met an old gentleman who had a pottery business, and Henry Wildman his name was, and he had decided he wanted to sell. And so my great-grandfather thought, well, I may as well become a potter. So he bought the pottery business, probably without ever having been to see it or anything. And in 1864 he bought what was the pottery business, which originally was founded in 1790. And in 1864 he then built it up and learnt how to become a potter. And he was obviously a very entrepreneurial sort of man, because he didn't buy anything in. He always decided he could do it himself and make it himself. So when he came to build the new factory, which was about 1890, he decided that he would make all his own bricks. So he dug a coal mine on the site and built a brick factory, and he made all his own bricks, and he built his own factory. And this is how he went all his life, and the company has always in those early days was totally self-sufficient. It did everything itself. Anything it needed, it bought. So it needed carriage, so they had a huge fleet of dray horses to drag the pots around and so on. And remembering, I mean, in those early days, the lighting was by candlelight in the early small factory at the top. But anyway, come the new factory, he built it, and he realised that he got it wrong, and he hadn't got the height of the factory quite right. So he thought, well, I've got to raise the roof. Now most people probably would have taken the roof off and started again, built some more courses of bricks and put the roof back on again. But he thought, no, he could do it a different way. And I mean, bear in mind, this is a very big factory. He put jacks under the roof, and he sat on the top of the roof, and he had people on all the acro props, and they merely acroed the roof up and put another course of bricks in. And then they acroed it a bit more and put another course of bricks in. This went on for I don't know how long it took. But this is he was known as Swearing Tom, because I think his vocabulary was fairly strong. and so there was a lot of fairly hefty language going on, I think. But he controlled this with the whistle. He had a whistle at the top. No mobile phones or anything in those days, and so when he blew the whistle, they accroded up another stage, and in went another load of bricks. And this was really how he went on. I mean, this was his way of living.
And the success was, did that come pretty immediately, or was that?
Oh yes, I think so. I think he was very good. I think he was very good at his job, because from 1864 he'd obviously made enough money with the little pottery, which initially was just a little craft pottery, really, making very simple stuff for local people. He developed that so that by 1890, 40 years, he'd obviously made enough money to build a very big modern factory, which at the time was considered to be as modern as anything they had in Stoke-on-Trent. It was always a family business, and it was a point that my father made to me way back, was that you didn't think about where you were going to do or what you were going to do. You automatically went into the business, and it was a family business. So I went straight into the business at the age of 17. We all knew that national service was on, so I would have to leave to do national service, but then I would obviously come back in again. So I went there straight from school at the age of 17. There's no question I started at the bottom, and I learned the trade from the bottom. So I joined, my first job was at the mill, because again, you see, the factory did everything itself. We made everything. We didn't buy in. We bought the clay in, but we made our own flint, our own stone, by buying in big rocks, breaking them down, crushing them, and making flint.
And how long were you kept on manual labour before?
Well, I suppose only about 3 months, because the plan was to move me through the various departments initially, to get a little bit of knowledge about all the processes. So from there I went to the clay works, where we actually then made the body that we were going to make the pottery out of, and then I moved from there to the biscuit department, where we fired it, and then I moved from there to the gloss department, where it was glazed and so on, and decorated, and then I went to the final bit was the packing department, by which time I was off to the national service. And so I was then sent off to Stoke Technical College to learn to be a potter, and then in the periods between the term times, obviously I was back at the works working in the various departments. I think that things were getting fairly hard in the 50s, and there were all sorts of various reasons for making it very difficult for potters throughout Stoke and so on. There was the introduction of the purchase tax, and there was some other financial things that were brought in by the government that made it much harder to make profit. And also then there was the Clean Air Bill that came out, and initially Greens always fired everything by coal, big bottle kilns fired by coal, and this meant that was the end of the bottle kilns. It didn't happen immediately, but it meant that the company had to start buying in electric fired kilns and so on, and generally I think they got fairly short of money. This big bottle kiln varies quite considerably, so you had to all the ware is still in clay form now. It hasn't yet been fired at all. Has to be stacked into what we called saggers, which were like great big containers, again made of earthenware, which we made. We had our sagger works who made the saggers. Everything had to be fitted